My name is Ed Nardi, Chair of the Natural Resources Commission, and I am calling this public meeting to order at 7 p.m. Tonight's NRC meeting will be a hybrid in-person and Zoom meeting. We have a microphone set up on the commission table, and plans will be projected through the TV monitor. If you are presenting via Zoom, please turn on your audio and microphone when it is time for you to speak. Following the presentation by the petitioner and questions from the commission, members of the public will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. Please identify yourself with your name and address for the record. You can also raise your hand from your phone by dialing *9 and use *6 to unmute. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of any commissioners attending virtually and the current petitioner. Once the commission has acted on an application, the petitioner is free to leave the meeting. In the event of any technical difficulties, all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be automatically continued to the February 7th meeting. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. At this time, I would ask the commissioners to introduce themselves. Bill?
Bill Cremeza.
Nick?
Nick Pappas.
And Sarah?
Sarah Glenwood.
Okay, thank you, guys. All right, so the first item on the agenda is a period of public comment, which is limited to 10 minutes with no more than 2 minutes allocated to each speaker. And again, this public comment is limited to items that are not on the agenda this evening. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is commissioner comments. Commissioners, any comments in general?
No, not for me.
Okay. Not seeing anything there. I'll move to the director's update. Celia.
The only thing that I have for the commission tonight is that DEP is in the midst of updating their regulations, both the Wetlands Protection Act regulations as well as Chapter 91 and the 401 regs. So the land subject to coastal storm flowage that is being addressed. It's an effort for trying to update the regulations to be more responsive to climate change, climate resiliency. And so I can send anybody who's interested a link. There's a red line version with the changes outlined. DEP is looking for comments by March 1st, and the Mass Society of Mass Society of Municipal Conservation Professionals, MSMCP, as well as MACC, and the Rivers Alliance are all going to be providing comment to DEP. We're talking with them to be able to provide sort of a joint comment letter. There are a number of workshops that DEP is hosting, as well as MACC. Those are all within the next couple of weeks. And so if people are interested, you probably got something through MACC. But if you would like something through the DEP workshops, we can provide you with those links.
Yeah, that'd be great. I would appreciate it. I'm
Okay.
interested in the coastal side a little bit.
Yeah.
It seems to be lagging.
It
for a
is,
long
so,
time.
well, it has been, I think they've been talking about providing performance standards for
Yeah,
land subject to coastal storm flowage for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
And it is in this version. I will say that the this version of the update of the revised regulations, they don't address things that we have been looking for a long time, including the ability for applicants to have as an exemption under the minor projects provision for invasive removal projects in the buffer zone. That's not in there.
Yeah.
They don't have anything in there for trail maintenance. But they do have something in there for like a shared use path, which seems, we thought, more like a rail trail, clearing kind of provision. So I think DEP is aware that there's a lot of, concern amongst the people who are on the ground with this, that there's not enough of what we had expected to see. And so they are anticipating that there will be this rollout of the regs, and then in the next year or two or so, there will be a regs revision 2.0 that incorporates. So, if there are immediate thoughts about these changes, they're late in their process. And so I think those changes, any comments are going to be pretty specific to what they'll incorporate. But if there are broader things that they missed, I think they'll consider those for a 2.0 version that will be in the next year or two or so.
It's a process.
It's a process.
Yeah.
But I'll send that out, or Karen, we'll send that out, for the DEP, workshops that will be held. I think they're next week and the following.
Yep.
Is that?
Great.
Okay.
Yes, Karen.
The approval of the meeting minutes.
Oh,
Just wanted to make sure that it gets skipped over.
Thank you, Karen.
thank you, Karen. All right. Deal, you all set?
Yes, that's it for me.
All right. And now we'll go back to the approval of the meeting minutes. I think we have two sets. One which was a revision to the July 19th, 2023 set, amended there, and the December 6th, 2023. I had a very small comment that I sent along to Karen on the December 6th. Otherwise, I had no comments. Nick, Bill, Sarah?
They look great to me, thanks.
Same here.
Okay. Could I have a motion for both those minutes?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we approve of both sets of minutes for what's the dates now? July 19th and December 6th. Not July 19th as amended and December 6th meetings.
All right. Nick, that's a second?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We'll take the vote. Bill,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
and I'm an I as well. All right. And now we'll move on to two continuances. One is to be continued, the other one is to be opened and continued. Nick or Sarah, you want to give a motion for those two continuances?
Okay, I move that we, let's see, the first one, continue to February 7th without discussion. Notice of intent for Labadini, 154 Southfield Road, DEP file number 1371641. And to be opened and continued to February 7th without discussion, request for determination of applicability, Copeland, 9 Shirley Street, RDA file number 23-14.
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. And the vote, Bill? Got it. Nick,
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I'm an I as well. All right, we'll move on to our first continuous to be heard this evening. That's the notice of intent. 141 Hawthorne Lane, DEP file 137-1657. And do we have Matt with us this evening?
Yes, good evening.
Evening, Matt. I think, you want to, I know we discussed this at our last hearing. Do you want to just discuss, I think there was just 2 or 3 points that you're going to go back and take a look at and perhaps make some revisions to. You want to touch on those?
Yes, am I able to share my screen?
Sure.
Let me know if everybody can see that, okay?
Looks good.
Okay, so essentially we clarified where the trees that were going to be taken down. You have note 7. There are 4 trees out in the front that will have to be removed because we got to nudge the system forward and do some grading out here because the commission had asked to take the tanks out of the 50-foot zone and move them over. So Evan took a look at the drawing and was able to move the trees over. We have a tree protection zone labeled number 8. The town's detail has been inserted into the plans. And we have tree replantation in the back, which is red maple to replace the trees that have been taken out. Or will be taken out. They haven't been taken out yet. Sorry. That was about it to my recollection.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we had those 3 notes as well, Matt. Looks like you've provided everything in good order. Commissioners, any comments on the application?
No,
No,
looks good to me.
All right. Thank you. Is there any public comment regarding this application? Okay, not seeing any. Nick, do you want to take a shot at the order conditions, please?
Yes, I move that we close and issue an order of conditions with findings for 141 Hawthorne Lane, DEP file number 1371657, with findings A and B, standard conditions 1 through 20 and special conditions 21 through 54.
second,
Thank you, Sarah. And we'll take the vote. Bill,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
Sarah,
aye.
and I am an I as well. Thank you, Matt. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. And Delia and team, thank you very much again for all your help. Good night, guys.
Night. All right. Our next continuance is a notice of intent, 166 Commonwealth Ave, DEP file 137-1643. Let's see. John, is John Rockwood here with us this evening?
Yes, I am.
Evening, John.
Good evening.
All right. Let's see. I think there was a handful of issues we had talked about over the course of at least a couple of meetings. Do you want to just touch on, I think there's a letter from a structural engineer. We had asked for some consideration about, maybe looking at the building size, but obviously you clarified your position on that in regard to more of a planning board, zoning board than a NRC issue. And again, I think there was some grading changes at the embankment on the retaining wall, et cetera. You want to highlight those for us this evening, John?
Yes, again, John Rockwood from Echo Tech. Oliver Guzman from Spruhane is here. He's the project engineer. If there's questions that come up regarding that, we'll send those over to him. Basically, the plans that were submitted in January are very similar to those that were submitted in September relative to the physical
John,
layout of this.
Sorry, John, will you be sharing your screen or do you want me to do that?
I can do that, sorry.
Thank you, John.
Yep, no problem. Can you see that screen?
There you go. Good.
Okay, this is the January proposed conditions plan. Most of the plan changes on this sheet and through the plan set, which was an expanded plan set, are related to responses to a peer review that was required by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they largely relate to stormwater components on the site. All of those issues have been addressed. We did provide a copy of the peer review letter as well as the responses to those on the plan sheet. But basically what it comes down to is the building size has been tweaked slightly. The parking area has been tweaked slightly. The walking path between the development and the river is the same as was shown on the September plan. We do show a 6-inch reveal at the wall as was requested by the commission. There's a note on the plan to that effect. And also that's something that can be listed in the order of conditions as well. There was a letter from the structural engineer, and he basically opined that the building itself is not going to pose a risk to the wall structure. But he did make a recommendation that certain activities be kept a minimum of 15 feet away from the wall during construction, and that shouldn't be a problem. That's again something that can be conditioned. The peer reviewer requested that the floodplain impact in the compensatory storage area be reevaluated. And basically the file numbers provided in the filing were sort of the largest numbers. When you actually sit down and think about a 3-inch fill over a couple of square feet, how many cubic feet that adds up to, what it comes down to is about 2.1 cubic feet are proposed to be filled and 15 cubic feet of compensation was provided. So there is additional flood storage on the site under proposed conditions compared to the existing conditions. Again, the overall project will result in about a 2,600 square foot reduction in impervious surfaces on the site, with a significant increase in vegetated area, particularly at the north end of the site near the river. There is a landscape plan that was provided as part of this. It has been made consistent with the civil plan with regard to the building, the driveway, and the walkway. The plantings are very similar to what was originally proposed in the previous version. I can show that plan. Do you see the landscape plan now?
We do.
Okay. I'll just blow this up a little bit if I can figure out how to do that. No, I can't figure out, I can't see the button to do that. So basically there's intensive plantings along the river. We've removed the lawn areas from along the river. This plan shows a bench. There is actually a landscape plan that's dated January 5th that was provided to the other boards that removes this bench and removes two doorways that are shown on this plan. I can provide that to the commission. It's just I was provided with that plan after the date that I had to get all these materials out, and this is the one I had on hand at that time. But basically, it's just removing this bench, so there is no seating along this pathway. There's no lawn along this pathway. It's all plantings, with the exception of the pathway itself, which is a permeable paver walkway, as was requested by the commission. So a lot of changes were made to the stormwater system. And there are a lot of additional, there were some additional plan sheets related to how the signage, painting of the lines, signage, access, those kinds of things. So there were a couple of additional plan sheets in the plan set that just sort of separated stuff out. So the plan was not so difficult to follow with regard to certain things. I think that basically sums it up. Again, the building and the pavement and the walkway are about the same, and the landscaping is about the same. Just most of the plan changes, again, relate to improvements to the stormwater system. A more robust erosion control was requested by the peer reviewer as well. So the erosion controls near the river now consist of siltation fence and compost sock. And it also extends a little bit further than the originally proposed erosion control did. There's also catch basin protection, covered stockpile areas, and a concrete washout area shown on the various plan sheets. I think that sums up what I have to say about the revised plans. Are there any questions?
John, I just have just a thought in regard to, thank you for having the structural engineer provide that letter on the retaining wall. And I did read it and note that he said for the heavy equipment to stay 15 feet away from that wall.
Yep.
That said, I think it would make sense to try to show that demarcation, that 15 feet on a host of the plans. It's hard for me to believe that, every sub's gonna read the order of conditions. They may, but we certainly don't want the demolition guy having a heavy piece of equipment out there. If it's not shown on the demolition plan, perhaps that, there's a 15-foot kind of a no-go zone for him for any heavy equipment.
Yeah, that's why I did include that sentence in my letter indicating that and the 6-inch reveal should be included as conditions, and the condition relative to the 15-foot offset could actually include, the installation of a construction fence at that line during construction to
I think it will be included in the order of conditions as a special condition, but I think Ed's point is well taken that, the contractor is going to be a lot more responsive to a note and a line on the plan than they are going to be to condition 43 of the order of conditions.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that'd just be helpful and just be mindful for, as we know, subs refer to plans all the time, and if they kind of constantly see that, it'll sink in, hopefully, right? For the benefit of the project.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
No problem.
Commissioners, comments?
Not for me, none for me.
No,
Okay,
I'm all good here, thanks.
okay.
No,
Nick,
none for me.
okay,
So I would just note that, the revisions that you provided to us, John, have also been provided to the town's peer reviewer. And they anticipate having comments back by the end of January.
okay,
So, hopefully everything is, copacetic and everybody's in agreement with the revisions that you've proposed and, they're in agreement with that. So I believe, it makes sense to continue this to the February 7th meeting.
Yeah.
And, this is scheduled for the February 6th planning board agenda
mm-hmm,
and the February 8th zoning board of appeals agenda.
Yeah.
So, that's a lot of ducks to have lined up, but, provided that the peer review is satisfactory to those revisions. I think that,
we'll have an order of conditions on the
I think we will see what comes back from the,
peer review.
Yeah.
Okay,
but if everything's copacetic, then we will be prepared to issue at the following meeting. So what is that, the 21st or
the
the
eighth,
28th? Yes. 28th.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. That way you'll have the planning board done, hopefully the zoning board done, peer
Right.
review done.
Right.
And then that'll just be, kind of a simple order of conditions to issue on the
Right.
28th.
Right.
Okay,
Okay,
That's
I'll
done.
see what comes back from, the peer reviewer and, if some plan changes are required, we'll get that 15-foot offset shown on a plan set and we'll get you the current landscape plan at that point in time. So that you have the complete, current materials.
And I believe there was a change that you provided to the planning board in terms of a light plant modification. So obviously make sure that our plans, we want to be sure that every single board that's approving a plan set is approving the same plan set. I don't want to see different revision dates for different boards.
There was a
So,
different plan set provided to whom?
I believe there was a different plan set provided to, the planning board. That reflected a change requested by the Concord Municipal Light Plant.
Okay. I will make sure that you have the, current
And we
materials.
want everybody to be signing off on the same,
Absolutely.
yep.
I was provided these materials the day before I had to get them to you.
Yes,
And
I think
apparently
it
some
came in probably
changes were
the day
made the
after.
day after that.
That's right.
That's how it
So,
works.
You know, the
Okay.
issue is you require the materials on the Thursday or the Friday, a week and a half in advance of the meeting. And
I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is that there's maybe just making sure that all of the,
Yeah.
all the plans are being submitted, to, it's the same plan set going to everybody. We do have different deadlines, but,
Right.
that's,
Yeah.
we meet on different dates and that's just how things operate.
Absolutely, I understand.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. So before we leave this, just want to go out to any public comment.
Quick question, is this the gas station?
Excuse me, yeah, this is the gas station, but I need your name and,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Address
Ken
if you want.
Allen,
Yeah.
54 Wadsworth Road.
Yeah.
It's curious, this is the gas station project on the corner there.
Hmm.
And,
this
That
is,
and what breaking ground on that project,
you'd have to ask John.
John?
Well, it really depends upon project permitting. You know, we have to have all the permits in place, we have to let all the appeal periods run out, and we have to
How
have
long-
pre-construction
I'm just
meetings with all the necessary boards.
Okay, thank you.
So are you anticipating that this is going to construction in the spring?
I would hope that work would begin during this construction season, yes. Because there is work to take down the existing structure, remove the tanks, do all those kinds of things, and then move forward with the project. So it's sort of a two-phase approach.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any comments, Delia, on Zoom?
Mm.
Okay, so at this point, John, we'll plan on seeing you back at the 7th, subject to any changes that come from the peer review, et cetera.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Good evening. All right, let's see. Just looking for them, keeping up. All right, so we have a new so we'll move on to our new applications this evening. The first one up is 39 Musketequid Road. That is a NOI DEP file number 137-1661. Perfect timing, Brian.
Change the arrangement.
Sure, come on up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the applicant is Jane Nietzsche.
Yeah,
She's
good
here.
evening.
And, hi, Bert. How are you? We do have a file number, I'm sure you're aware. And Bert was kind enough to do a site review last Thursday, or about a week ago. The project is essentially, landscaping work, associated work on the river, on the Sub River. It's a 1 acre lot. It's a well-established, it's the vintage of the house, probably
I think 1906.
Yeah, about
Something about that.
100 plus years
Something
old.
like that.
It's been there for a bit. Thanks for putting this up. We do have the survey plan that's stamped in by Jeff Purley that this is based upon, but the actual active phase of it is in the plan. You,
So which one, do you want to see this one or?
if you put the other one up, Delia, just for a second, I can give, Bert's been there, but the rest of you have not, at least not recently. So, yeah, there we go. Oops, this chest plan, it's kind of a spider web of resource areas. There's floodplain, borderland subject to flooding, riverfront, inner and outer, there's buffer zone, 25, 50, 100-foot buffer zones. And land under water body, which is not demarcated. The riverfront area is the blue line at the top there. That's at the tree line adjacent to the river. There's a seasonal dock that's de-installed now, if you will, right? Yep, thank you. And as we move up, you can see there's a large oak tree right at the pointer, the cursor, that has a little bit of a elevated topography there, very subtle. And BVW is the green line that the cursor is on right now. It kind of goes in a teardrop shape, if you will, around. As we move landward from there, there's those 2 polygons with the iconography of some kind in there. Are porcelain berry patches that, I don't know what the derivation, whether somebody planted them there deliberately at one point in the past when that was fashionable or acceptable, but they're pretty much monocultural patches of porcelain berry that we plan to eradicate under the context of this submission. The other activities proposed are largely restorative of the landscape. We want to, and in the so if everybody has a concept of where we are, the blue is the dash blue is inner riverfront, and then the one subsequent to that, it's probably just off screen, is the second, and then the floodplain is where the cursor was just now. Floodplain is, I think it's 120.8 or thereabouts elevation. So our activities in a range of resource areas. What I guess the simple case, and we talked with Bert about this, we proposed, if you could switch to the next one, Dean, the landscape plan. There we go. Going from the shore side seaward, we have a proposed tree house or playhouse, really. It's not up in, it's not a Tarzan jungle kind of thing. Right at the floodplain boundary. And we talked about, will that displace any floodplain with Bert? And he, from a precedence perspective, he didn't wanted to discourage us from asking you to ignore that, even though it's fairly trivial, but which is not objectionable at all. But we did the calculation, it's gonna be 4 posts, and the most it will be is 1 cubic foot displacement. So we will dig a hole under the playhouse, to, at least 3 cubic feet where nobody will fall in it or trip in it right at the 120.8 elevation. And I think we can overcompensate for that and not make you have a precedent on the record for absolving us of that obligation. But it's even more trivial than we thought when we were talking to Bert in the field. Other activities are eradication of the porcelain berry And Karen, the landscape architect who prepared this plan, it proposes to essentially smother it with cardboard, with about a 3-inch layer of cardboard, mulch that and topsoil over that, and then let that just degrade, the cardboard to degrade, rather than be more, than spray or excavate it to, down to extreme depths or whatever. So we want to eradicate both of these patches by that methodology, cut it down to a stubble, and then overtop it. This is the area within the 25-foot will be naturalized with the native seed mix. And the area beyond 25 will be just restored to lawn, grass, lawn grass. As we discussed in the field with Bert. So this demarcation line is at 25, and seaward of that will be naturalized with a native seed mix, and landward of that will be converted into lawn. It's also removal of some trees and snag Norway maples that aren't anybody's real friend here. A couple of dead snags here, over here, a couple of dead cedars or hemlocks, I think there probably are. And then restoration of this area with native, there's a planting list down here of native species, and we carefully reviewed them, so there's no cultivars, no morning blaze or any of these kind of adjectives on the and Karen understands that we want to use just real native plants in the resource area. I think besides that, did I miss anything that we? I mean, it is summarized here, but I was trying to be for a little bit of brevity.
Thank you, Brian. So I guess just one question that I have is just where you're removing the porcelain berry, and the portion that's in the BBW, would you consider?
None of it's actually in.
Oh, I thought it
Yeah,
was, I
it's
thought it was,
just outside, yeah, we have work in the. This is, and it's, this is the BBW line,
yeah,
this is the 25 is buried under here.
okay, okay.
So we're not actually working in
I see.
that resource area.
So I guess I would just revise my question, say,
Sure.
would you consider, more kind of shrub replacement versus grass replacement
In the,
in the 25?
Well, in the 25 was gonna be a meadow mix.
Yeah.
Would you be objectionable to putting some woody material in there
No
from the
objection.
same?
That'd be great. Thank you.
We can discuss what specifically among these, there's a number of these that are low growing but have some 3-dimensionality to it, if that's
Yeah.
what you're kind of going for.
So the idea being that, if it's herbaceous material and you're sort of lawn against herbaceous, that over time, it just becomes one. And so
Yeah.
if you have a little bit more vertical structure that you,
It won't be readily mowed, but yeah.
right.
And this area, as I put in the narrative, has been historically, probably since the 60s, cut by John Boardman. That wasn't done this year. So the plant community was able, even though Bert couldn't see really much of it, the plant community was able to express itself in both parts of those fingers of the BBW.
We were trying to leave it for you to see.
But normally,
No luck.
since anybody can recollect, I think John has mowed, he's what, 96 now or something, but he's still, as far as I understand, still going at it, so.
Really?
I don't know what will happen when he passes the
maybe not
torch,
96, I don't know if he's that old. but
Yeah.
it's-
or 93 or something, yeah, he's up there.
Yeah.
So we'll presume he'll do that, but we'll make sure that if he does come back next year,
Mhm.
we'll flag it so that he doesn't get too ambitious with the cutter.
All right. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Nope, sounds good.
Okay, Sarah, Nick, are you good?
Well, I don't have any concerns, but I'm just interested, Delia, that you're comfortable that just smothering the porcelain berry, it won't kind of come back over time once the seeds are exposed potentially, or not?
It's a pilot project, I would say, and I'd be interested to see how well it works, and it will
Okay.
be overseen by Brian or whoever. So, we'll get reports on how that works. I have seen smothering. I'm curious to see how it unfolds as a
Yeah.
pilot project. We've done
Yeah,
over
me
3
too.
years,
Okay.
so
And it's not, my preference, if it was me, I would have just blasted with glyphosate, because I'm feeling, I've read a lot about it and, the Monsanto suit and everything is based on, you can find a jury of imbeciles, to rule on anything. Glyphosate is very benign, it binds the soil quickly, it's not a hydrocarbon. But, we're not gonna rather than do that, we're gonna smother it, and it's not not a species like, Japanese knotweed is adapted to lava slopes. Bamboo is adapted to growing in through or, through asphalt or anything.
Right.
So in discussing it internally, I think that the smothering method, and the other, if it wasn't in somebody's front yard, I would just say to smother it for a period with butyl rubber, roofing rubber.
Yeah.
And that would get rid of it, it would incinerate it underneath, but this is more of a friendly approach.
Yeah,
And
no, that's
we'll have
great.
an
Thank you.
opportunity to hand pull anything that erupts.
Right.
Janie's eminently aware of it, and so if it
Nice.
starts to
Yeah.
proliferate around the edges, we can hopefully dispatch with it.
Right,
And we have 3 young kids. We were trying for the non-chemical route.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, no,
absolutely.
absolutely. I wouldn't support a chemical route. I was just interested in the success of this method, but we'll find out. Thank you.
So I do have one
Yeah.
comment just on the mid-annual high water flagging. I think you and Bert talked about it in the fields, and because what's out there, the flags are a lot lower than the water level right now, which is obviously not a mid-annual high water, maybe it's seasonal, I don't know.
Mhm.
But there's 2 options that you can either wait until we can get to a mid-annual high water condition that we can evaluate in the fields. Or if I don't think it matters for this application where that mid-annual high water line actually is. So if you want to just have the commission make a finding that the resource area boundaries aren't confirmed under this application,
that's
it's up
fine,
to
yeah.
you how you want to proceed with
Because
that.
there was a
but-
prior filing that based it on an elevation, based on,
Well, it was much higher.
Yeah,
So I
it
think
is.
yours are based at 114 or 112 as the.
at the tree
Right,
line
so
essentially, yeah.
Down at the bridge, at the Park Service, there was an elevation tied to the mid-annual high water elevation. That was 114, Bert, is that right? Was
It was around, I don't remember off
Something-
the top of my head
right,
exactly
okay,
what
so
it
it
was, but
was
it was around there.
4 feet lower than
Yeah.
what we're seeing here, so I mean, it could
4 feet
certainly
higher,
be,
yeah, or,
right.
but if you want to make it so it's not determined for the purpose, it doesn't change
Depends
it,
on
like
how
you said.
quickly
but-
you want to proceed with getting an approval. I mean, I think at this point, this is ready to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
move to a closed issue at the next meeting, but
Yeah.
it just is, you're not gonna have those boundaries approved.
Yeah, that's fine, because even if you put it up toward the street more, it really doesn't change
Correct.
the, the performance standards or
Won't change for
compliance,
this
yeah.
project.
So I think we're fine.
Okay, good. So with that, let me just ask for public comment, before we move on, in regard to 39 Muscataqua Road. Any public comment? Not seeing any? Okay. So with that, I think, we'll continue to the 7th, should have an order condition ready for you and kind of go from there. No need for attendance, so.
Yeah, we could attend right remotely if there's
Sure,
any
happy to have you.
reason, but.
You're welcome to
yeah.
attend, but I don't
Yeah.
think there's any, it
Okay.
would be under.
Read into
closed
the
issue.
record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Thanks for your
Thanks
time.
very much. Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
All right. So the next new application this evening is notice of intent for Daniel 359 Old Bedford Road. It does not have a DEP file number yet, correct?
It's not.
Okay. All right, and I think it's noted it's Stamsky and McNary. Who do we have this evening?
I will be I will be representing the applicant for this project. My name is Robert
All right.
Melvin with Stamsky McNary.
Good evening, Robert.
Good
Do
evening.
you want to go ahead and share your screen, Robert?
Sure. Okay. Okay, so here we have 359 Old Bedford Road. It is
Robert, would you mind blowing that up a little bit if you don't mind?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 0.63 acre property here. I'll just go over the existing conditions really quickly. We have an existing 2-story dwelling here. It might be a little hard to make out, but it's demarcated by the thinner line here, if you sort of follow my mouse. This is the existing dwelling here. And then it cuts down with the porch at an angle here. And then this is the garage, the existing garage here. The existing deck, I'm just now noticing that shouldn't be darkened here, but this is the existing deck, which I am now encircling. And the resource areas on site include the bordering vegetative wetland, which is located to the west side here, as well as the north here, and projects a 100-foot buffer zone onto almost the entire lot. So the applicant is proposing to renovate the dwelling, which would include the portion of the house, which is including this existing porch, which is now being made into an entryway that'll be completely covered, and extends the building here where my mouse is, and then will include a brand new deck with a new staircase here to the north. And following along my mouse, that's the end of the deck here. And then they will be proposing to construct a garage here with some floor space above it. And so all the additions are located either on existing impervious structure or existing lawn. The proposed or the existing driveway is not proposed to be expanded in any way. It's actually being cut off here by the footprint of the new garage. We are proposing to remove the series of retaining walls, which are located here on the south end of the dwelling, and just to be replaced by some grass. We have the additions are set back no closer to the BVW than existing conditions. You can see we're about 66 feet away at our closest point. If we look to the north here, we're much closer than that. I believe that's more in line with about 30 feet away from BVW. And we're proposing a siltation barrier to prevent erosion from entering the wetland. We've extended it up to the north side here, just because we feel that access with machinery to complete the construction will be needed to be made around the dwelling to the north side. So we have extended our work area to this end of the site. I also wanted to mention that we did receive some comments today from the Conservation Department. And I just wanted to touch upon a few of those real quick as well. So there's an existing fence here. You can sort of make out the outline here. We're showing it, and it extends into the BVW, and it actually does continue up through the BVW and loops around and connects to the fence up to the north. I apologize for not having shown this on the plan. I did just notice this today that it wasn't being shown here. So, we will go back and have that located by survey. Also, we received a comment that additional wetland flagging should be provided between flags 6 and 7. It was noted that the distance here is just far too great. There may be some variability with this delineation between the 2 points. So I've notified our wetland scientists to head out back to the site and just get another flag or 2 between 6 and 7. And I believe that is all I wanted to touch upon today. Oh, I'm sorry. We're also proposing a mitigation area here, which should be a 1-to-1 ratio of the added impervious area. Typically, this is at a 1-to-1 ratio of disturbed or altered area. However, the entire extent of our construction area is already previously altered. So Instead, we've chosen to make this mitigation at a 1-to-1 ratio with the impervious area that's being added onto the site. And we've provided an impervious area table in the notice of intent. I did notice that there was a discrepancy between this number shown here and the added impervious area. So we do plan to make a correction on that, as well as provide adequate spacing between the plantings here. There really should be 5 feet of separation between each plant. So this area will be extended and expanded upon, likely toward this end of the site here. So we do understand that revisions will have to be made. And regardless, there is no DEP number issued here tonight. So we do understand this may warrant a continuance, but I would love to discuss this project with you for the time being. So I'll take any questions.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Let's see. So I guess you noted in the beginning of the presentation about the fence that isn't shown on the plan. However, if the fence is generally where you indicated it does pose a problem for the commission in the sense that it is either right at the BVW or right at the, somewhere in the 25 to BVW.
Inside the wetlands.
Oh, so it's inside the wetlands. So that certainly the back side of that fence will have to be taken down. And my guess is at a minimum, the fence would have to be out of the 25 as well on either side.
So I haven't had much time exactly to discuss this. I just received the comment today, and like I said, I hadn't exactly noticed that the fence wasn't there. So what I will say is that I do believe the fence to be exempt for a couple of reasons here. One being that I did get to briefly talk with the applicant before the meeting, and he did indicate to me that the fence had been properly permitted with the Conservation Commission. And I do intend to provide any documentation to support that prior to the next meeting. And then also, I believe that because the fence is in existence already, and that a fence is defined as a structure in the bylaw sorry, let me kind of restart here. Because a fence is defined as a structure in the bylaw, and the maintenance of existing structures on the property is an exempt activity, I do believe that the maintenance of the existing fence, and when I say maintenance, I just mean, allowing the structure to remain in existence. I do believe it should be exempt here. And then just some practical reasons. I mean, there's not a lot of a backyard space here, with the BVW being as close as it is approaching in the backyard and projecting such a large buffer zone onto most of the site. So the applicant really isn't allotted much backyard space. So the fence, serves as, a boundary of his backyard that's been maintained historically. And it provides protection for his children and dog that, like to enjoy the backyard space.
Okay, well, I guess if you want to start with providing us, a record of the approval of the fence, I guess that's a good place to start for next meeting.
Sure.
What about the shed? Isn't the shed also in the 25?
It is, but I think that's again, it
Is that
depends.
pre-existing?
Yeah, it all depends if it's pre-existing to their
Yeah.
ownership or not, Sarah, right?
Yeah,
So I think if the current owners put the shed there, then that would be problematic, of course.
My name is Mark Daniel. I'm the applicant and owner. I can
Hey,
give a
Mark.
little more context. So yes, we the shed was pre-existing when we bought the property.
okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And what I can tell you is there actually was an existing fence. There's a lake there's a pond that's not shown back here. And there was a pre-existing fence almost at the property line. So when we went to redo the fence, one of the things we worked with the Natural Resources Commission and got approval, which we'll provide documentation for, was, well, we wanted to allow that fence to stay outside the BVW, which at the time was surveyed to be at the fence. Climate change being what it is, I think the BVW has moved to consume almost half my lawn now. And so this has been, the fences aligned with my neighbor's fence, both neighbors' fences, as well as the previously maintained areas. And we've allowed areas behind the fence to naturalize, and we removed the previously existing fence as part of that effort to allow that to naturalize around the pond, but keep my children and my dog safe from that, as well as the culvert that is to the north.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate the background. And again, why don't we start with the, at least just getting us all on the same page in regard to the prior approval for that fence where it's currently located. I think that would be a good start in regard to that particular discussion. And then we can go from there regarding the fence. And as you noted, the shed was already a pre-existing condition prior to your purchase. Let's see. I think with that, commissioners, any other comments or notations?
No,
from-
I don't think
You
so.
good, Bill? Sarah, you good?
No, nothing else, thanks.
Okay, Nick?
Nothing. No.
All right. Okay, I think with that, we'll go out for public comment. Anything on your end, Delia?
Mm-mm. Nope, nothing else really.
Okay. All right, with that, if it's agreeable to you, would you like to continue to February 7th to do a little bit of investigation in the background of that and continue the discussion?
Yes, please. That would be great.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you back on the 7th.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank you.
commissioners, for your time.
Yep, likewise. All right. The next project up is Novo Riverside Common, 292 and 294 Baker Ave. And that's a DEP file number 137-1660. And who's with us this evening?
All crowd here.
Yes, it's Dan Feeney from Bales and Thomas. We're the civil engineer and land surveyors for the project. Tom McLark from Bales and Thomas is there as well. Brian Butler from Oxbow Associates and Kevin Hurley from Hurley and Associates.
Great, good evening.
Good evening.
All right.
Again, Bert spent some time with us, myself and Dan Holmes at the project site on Thursday, the same day. Yes, and we appreciate the giving of it.
And Dan
I
is.
think it's easier.
Yeah.
Right.
You guys know where you wanna go.
Yeah,
so.
thank
It's a
you.
large group here, we go to ZBA for
I
for the
see.
40B, so
Okay,
the team, this is probably a quarter of the
sure, understood.
team players, but we're trying to be efficient.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll start off just by giving an overview of the existing conditions at the site. So, the existing site is 65 acres, and includes the office building at 310 Baker Avenue. In addition to that 65 acres, it's part of a larger office park that also includes the Harvard Vanguard building at 330 Baker Avenue, as well as the hotel at 320 Baker Avenue. But the existing subject site is just the 65 acres, which is the 300 Baker Avenue project. It's got frontage both on Baker Avenue as well as Baker Avenue Extension. On this plan, north is basically to the right of the plans, and it's like that on all the plans. So up at the north, or up at the top of the page, which is the western side of the site, is the Assabet River. It's the property line along the western edge of the site, so it comes all the way across the back side of the site. There's also a wetland pond on the southern side of the site. And so the proposal is to A&R a 10.2 acre piece of the property, which would be the southern portion of the site, which is on the left-hand side of the page, and create a 40B affordable housing project consisting of 201 units in 2 buildings. So if you go to the layout and materials plan, it's probably gonna be the best one to kind of walk through the proposed, yeah, here we go. So again, two buildings, addresses of 292 and 294 Baker Avenue. On the bottom left-hand side is Baker Avenue, just off Locust and running as the abutter to the south of the property is the MBTA Railroad. So you can kind of see right where Baker Avenue and site intersect. There's the railroad crossing as it crosses Baker Avenue. The proposal for the two buildings in the 201 units would include 284 parking spaces, of which 157 would be podium parking spaces. So underneath the living units within each building. 292 would have 2 levels of podium parking. 294 would have 1 level of podium parking. And then in addition to the development itself, the buildings and the parking in the yellow area coming from Baker Avenue and coming all the way up through the site is a proposed multi-use trail. It would be part of the town trail system or connect into the town trail. So this trail would be built by the developer, but an easement would be provided for access to that trail. As we got into the process a little bit, the trail was originally about about 960 feet or so. Or 940 feet, I believe. It was extended 220 feet, and that's that kind of greenish color there, to include extra length in conversations with the town to connect in where the town would want to pick up that trail, and the trail would continue further to the west, going over the Assabet River and connecting to the other side over where the MBTA commuter rail station is. So just an overview of the wetland resource areas on the site. To the west, which is the top of the plan, obviously have the Assabet River up there. There's bordering vegetative wetlands associated with the Assabet River. There's the riverfront area associated with it. So there's the 100-foot and 200-foot riverfront areas, and then the pond itself is bank for the most part. There is some bordering vegetative wetlands at the southeast corner, and then again, obviously, buffer zones associated with both the bordering vegetative wetland and the bank for the pond, as well as for the bordering vegetative wetlands around the Assabet River. So in terms of the overall development, it's a little bit hard to see on this plan. You can kind of see the outline. Existing conditions, there is parking lots on this area of the site. So both to the east and to the west of the pond. Yep, you can see it in that gray area there is the edge of the existing parking. There's access off of Baker Avenue coming in to provide access to the 300 Baker Avenue site. It is proposed that access would shift a little bit further to the east, so a little bit further away from the pond, a little bit closer to our eastern property line. And so this project would result in an approximately 1 acre increase in impervious area, because we are both encroaching beyond the limits of that existing curb line, particularly for 292 Baker Avenue, as well as coming into the hillside on the other side of the parking that exists out there now. So that's the biggest areas of increased impervious, as well as probably about a 1/4 acre of the total impervious area increase is for the multi-use trail. It's a 10-foot wide proposed trail with 3-foot shoulders on each side. The existing drainage system that's out there today primarily consists of existing catch basins, which then discharge through flared ends to the pond. There is some sediment forebays, some shallow depressions that exist currently out there today. Under proposed conditions, we are going to we're proposing to direct the roof runoff as well as a portion of the parking lot to some subsurface infiltration systems. shown in the green here. So there's one associated with 292 that will take the 292 roof runoff, as well as the initial portion of pavement as you come off of Baker Ave coming into the site. And then for 294 Baker Avenue, there's another subsurface infiltration basin, yeah, right up in there. Again, that's for the roof runoff up in that area of the site. For the balance of the parking lots out there, there is water quality units proposed to treat the stormwater. So it'll be collected in catch basins, but then be routed through water quality structures prior to discharge, either to the pond, or there is an outlet to the north to the BBW. And in addition to the wetland resource areas I talked about earlier, there is also a existing conservation restriction that exists, basically not too far off in most areas from the 200-foot riverfront area. We did propose as part of the initial application, and I know that there was a comment back regarding it on the far northern part of the site out by Baker Avenue Extension, as you approach Route 2, a deeding 7.8 acres of land that's currently in a conservation restriction to the town. And we can have a discussion on whether that's something that the Natural Resources Commission is looking for. We do know that the trail, as you get beyond the developed portion of the site, does go through the existing conservation restriction. So we'll have to work through that process as well. In terms of other mitigation for the project site, Brian has worked with the landscape architect to come up with areas of invasive species removal around the pond, as well as some native plantings down in that area. So that's sort of an overview of it. I know we did also get some comments regarding providing additional details or details for dewatering, soil stockpile areas, as well as consideration for whether the multi-use trail as it runs through the site can be a permeable pavement type material as opposed to a typical impervious brick conch trail. So I'm happy to discuss those items and answer any questions. And I don't know if you want Brian to sort of walk through the invasive species removal or just have a general conversation first.
Whatever you'd like to do, Brian, if you want to touch
Yeah, I'll
on it.
just pick up from the end there. The pavement is a 10-foot wide path with 3-foot shoulders that are going to be stabilized so that a fire truck or emergency vehicle could drive off the road, off the paved trail, and still wouldn't sink in the mud or anything. So we have a honeycomb, proprietary honeycomb structural product that you can plant into, but a vehicle isn't going to disappear into it. And so we've been talking internally since talking with Bird out there about, he asked if we make it impervious pavers or something, and we looked at the different products and logistics of it. And from my, if we use pavers, if any of them heave, they're gonna be a liability for people tripping. If we use pervious pavement itself, that requires maintenance and structural underneath, if you just put it on the ground, it's gonna just saturate and it's not gonna do anything, so you need to go down, and then you still have the maintenance issue. And my thought process in the discussion is that if this was say we have 5,000 square feet of asphalt on this whole trail, if it was in a rectangle or a square and the water comes down on it, then the water's gonna sit there until it's discharged by whatever conveyance. Whereas a 10-foot crown trail of solid impervious asphalt is gonna just leak off 5 feet either way, or at the most 10 feet into those honeycomb structural product, which is gonna be vegetated. So we don't think there's not gonna be a real accumulation of stormwater or rainwater associated with the trail. So we prefer to stick with the durable, plowable, maintainable, conventional asphalt product is where I've arrived independently or in discussion with people. Other topics that Dan brought up, the trail. Is it on this? Yeah. The trail, this is our 924 or thereabouts foot trail is within the project area and part of the project. And maybe this sheet doesn't show it.
Where you wanna go up?
Just to the actual, the little more passive trail, if it's on this point. Yeah, here we go. So this will be part of the town trail that the applicant will undertake the implementation or construction of. And we're gonna have a connection here to an existing, looks like an old cart, farmer's cart road or something. It's about 5 or 8 feet wide and it winds down to the river. There's a plan, I think, to have a kayak rack somewhere accessible to that. So before this trail is built, there will be some access for the public to the river, but it won't be formalized and improved per se. But ultimately, these two trails will have a connection so that, and this won't be restricted to just the residents. It'll be, also public availability, just like this trail will. And there was one other, oh, and just if we could slide up now again, Tom, to the pond, sorry. In the landscape plans we submitted with Tom Miner, Hawk Design, we divided the pond shore into 3 zones. I think 1 is the western side, 2 is the northeastern side, and 3 is the southern side. Zone 3 is no action. We're gonna just leave the trees that overhang. That's a natural woodland, not a lot of invasives. It's way out of the way and it's very steep slope from the pond edge, up into the adjacent woods. We're gonna leave that as is. And this section is already kind of a park-like environment where the grass almost goes right to the pond edge. Except there is some buckthorn and some ailanthus and other stuff that we don't really want there. So we're gonna, cut and dab the undesirables. And if we have voids in here, we wanna have the pond shore be pretty contiguous with vegetation for aesthetics, for ecological issues, and for, we don't want the, access to the pond to be kind of willy-nilly or just random. We don't want people saying, oh, this is my spot and I'm gonna, dump my trash. We want to have 2 dedicated accesses, 1 for each building, more or less. So this area would be, remove the bad, which is the obvious list of pernicious vegetation, and interplant with river birch, gray birch, pin oak, I think we have on our list as needed. And we think there's about a dozen, small tree specimens we would intersperse along this shore. Along the sector 2 or area 2 is described in the Hawk Design plan. We this area here is a dense, it's a hedge of Asiatic bittersweet, which when I first, I'm not used to looking at bud scars of bittersweet, because usually can just, there it is, it's bittersweet. Whether it's American or Bicularis or is another question, but finally, after some confusion, I realized that whoever's been maintaining it's just been kind of hedge cropping this monoculture of bittersweet in here. And we plan, some of that will be in the path of this trail, and some of it will be still seaward of that. So we're going to plan to remove that. We want to till up the roots. We'll have an erosion control barrier here along the pond edge. Till this out, maybe screen the soil. We may want to find that the soil there is actually very nice. It's nice sandy loam. When we've augured into it, it's totally suitable. So we may want to screen that on site and then replace it and plant it as proposed in the planting scheme. So we do want to maintain a buffer, vegetated buffer over the majority of the pond. Initially, we'll probably fence this off until it matures to some extent, either with a temporary fence or just a symbolic fence. But ultimately, we want the fence or the barrier to be vegetative as opposed to, kind of a stockade or prison camp kind of environment. So the same thing out here, we may have to temporarily discourage access here while the plantings mature a little bit, but essentially we want the pond to be kind of standalone but accessible at 2 locations. One by the beehives. If you've been out there, there's somebody has a couple of beehives, and another it's actually already, I think this is it here. There's already kind of a void there of trees. There's a lot of nice pin oaks, mature pin oaks, and some smaller river birch and gray birch along there. And we just want to embellish that a little bit to fill it in as we remove some of the buckthorn and rose and some of the other species. this area here is pretty nasty. The only native thing out there is 1 or 2 elderberries, some black raspberry, Allegheniensis in there, and there's 1 or 2 other specimens there, but nothing that really warrants a salvation project or a salvage project. So we plan on removing virtually all the vegetation in that area up to the pond shore and then replacing out of kind, if you will. Was there other,
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention, which I didn't get into, is the bordering land subject to flooding.
flood
So,
count,
yeah, so the blue line on the plan here is the 100-year floodplain. So the pond and everything heading to the north of that is in the floodplain. So the things that are outside the floodplain, the majority of the building on the bottom of the site, 292, is upgrading of the floodplain. As you come off of Baker Ave, it's outside the floodplain, and then you know, the 60% or so of the southern half or of 294 is outside the floodplain, as well as the existing parking lot that's up there and the proposed parking lot. So for the areas that are proposed to be filled, which is a small section of the 292 building and the northern section of 294 and sort of those areas surrounding it, because we have to have the floor elevations of those higher than the floodplain elevation. So obviously we have to come up with the walkways and the driveways adjacent to those areas be above it as well. So there is floodplain fill associated with the project. We are compensating through the use of storm trap chamber systems, which we've provided some information within the application, both details and perspective views, as well as some history on where those storm trap units have been used elsewhere for floodplain compensation. So, you know, that's in there. The way we did the floodplain compensation in terms of the calculations, it is being compensated on a foot-by-foot basis in accordance with the wetland regulations, and there is an excess of floodplain compensation. You know, and partly what we're looking at that extra floodplain compensation for is mitigation for increases in runoff volume. So the increase in the floodplain compensation is higher than the increase in the 100-year runoff volume increase associated with the project. So that was sort of the logic behind that. And I should note that the town's consultant GPI is reviewing the stormwater calculations, which include the floodplain compensation. We had a conversation with them last Friday, just, you know, answer a few questions that they had, and they had indicated that they would be issuing a review letter shortly. I don't know if it will be this week, but they thought it wouldn't be too much longer to issue a review letter. The other thing I think just to note is the trail, as it picks up at the edge of development and heads into the conservation restriction area. We do have a meeting with GPI, who's also the town's consultant for the trail project, their section of the trail project, and MassDOT on Monday. It's to sort of review the requirements for that section of the trail. Right now, because that is all elevated, that section, because it is going through the floodplain. You know, so it's through floodplain and other you know, it is in the riverfront area, in that area as well, the 200-foot riverfront. There's no work in the 100-foot riverfront as part of our project. The trail, as it would be continued and picked up by the town, would obviously go into the 100-foot riverfront to get across the river. But to see if there's any possibility of making the trail narrower up in that area. As part of the application, it's 18 feet wide. So we're looking to see if we can get it to 12 feet wide. The 18 feet that we used was consistent with what the town has been using up in that area. So that's why we have included that as part of our original application, but we are, you know, seeing if it can be reduced a bit.
And when you say that's elevated, is it like a like
Boardwalk.
a
kind of
boardwalk.
Boardwalk,
type.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it would be,
okay.
it would be up on post,
Yeah.
posted by post.
Okay,
And we do have, a structural engineer involved now to just give some details on that. So we can, quantify, the post volumes that are
Sure.
taken up in the floodplain and,
Yeah.
as well as, the gray area, right where the BB section and the AA section is right there, those are, parking spaces that would be up on a deck. So similarly, a structural engineer would be looking at that. So just that gray area. And that would allow the floodwaters to go underneath the parking, so to go underneath into the deck and then into those chambers on the other side. So it provides a, unrestricted hydraulic connection to the floodplain.
and so that's all below the podium parking.
It's below the podium parking,
Okay.
yeah.
Or below the deck.
Oh, below the
Below
deck.
the-
Below
right,
the
yeah,
deck,
the
yeah.
parking.
There's an existing like compensation basin, a surface compensation basin that this is situated in, so the idea was we're augmenting that with the chambers. So here's the existing basin. And we're, constructing this parking lot, and these storm trap systems are all open to daylight. So the idea is this floods in, this floods underneath the deck, floods into this
Like
system.
through. Yeah.
And then floods up along this edge and floods into these chambers as well as these ones. These are all interconnected here. But yeah, that was the rationale, to really augment the existing floodplain compensation basin that was already out there.
And this is sort of a larger scale version of the Millbrook Terry deck out there. Right, yeah, right
Oh, you-
over the street.
Like the
That-
cantilever deck?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's not cantilever per se, but it's
right.
essentially open, one face open so that water can come and go as needed. And there's a couple of examples that were cited in the notice, one in Haverhill at a Burger King, that they have same thing, a bunch of galleys sit on one side of the building where floodwater from the Merrimack can go, and then the.
I think it's similar to what VOA did across the river as well.
Oh, is that right? Okay,
The Concord Park Volunteers of America project.
Oh, is there, we weren't aware of that.
It's-
in law.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar, it is similar to this. It's not exactly the same, but it's a similar to.
Yeah, this is what it would look like in perspective. Here's the deck. You can see it in red, and the idea is everything flows underneath there, gets into these chambers that are open. We have a couple of sections. to just illustrate what's happening. This is if you're standing in that basin, and here's the parking deck up above, and then here's the chambers beneath it. Just to give you an idea, and these storm trap chambers, they have like knockouts in the sides to keep everything interconnected, so as the waters rise within the system, it's even.
And so what about in the podium parking itself? I mean, that is constructed in the groundwater, and how do you keep water out of those?
Yeah, so surface water is disconnected based on the grade.
Right.
So the 292 building, the podium parking, the grade level podium parking, you come in at 125, which is above the floodplain, which is 124.7.
Okay,
So you're up above it. You then
and then you go
go
down.
down a speed ramp
Yeah.
internally. So at that point, but there's no way for water, it would have to be greater than a 100-year storm, to overtop and get into the garage. At 294, again, you have the 125 contour, where you would go down a ramp into the podium level. So there's only one level of podium at 294, and that's at 118. But again, there's no hydraulic connection to it, so it'd have to again get higher than 125 in order to be able to get down and get in.
So they come back in and go
Right,
down.
so and this is not a regulatory question because we don't regulate beyond the 100-year floodplain, but what happens when you do have that, two back-to-back 75-year storms under frozen ground conditions where you do have greater than the 100-year storm event, what happens?
Yeah,
Then you end up with water in
you could end up with
Yeah.
water in your garage that you'd have to pump out. But,
Yeah.
If the river was already high and there was another predicted storm, my guess is they would evacuate the garage
Yeah.
and put sandbags and stuff across the front of it and stuff like that to make it so the water couldn't get into it.
Okay. All right, appreciate the overview.
Thank you.
Lot to take in, but appreciate that. So just going back to that pathway a little bit.
Yep.
So there's a portion, most of it's out of the 25, I believe.
Yes,
There is a portion in the 25.
yes,
Right.
right, to the, well, there's a few different, I think, areas where it gets, well, that's, yeah,
Down below.
the actual
By the pond. I think.
surface
Yeah,
pathway,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so, in the area right beyond the fire lane there, as you head to the west there, yep, I think we're in the 25 in that area, and then as you head, back towards Baker Avenue, yeah, right down in there, you're certainly, within the 25 down in that area as well.
And that path was chosen from just some topography in the back, or trying to maintain a level site or create a level site, because obviously, you know, anything you could do to stay out of the 25 would be good. But, and just wanted to know what the 20, and this path is supposed to be, is it a multimodal path, or as well as a emergency responder?
So, yeah, so it's primarily for, you know, bicycles and pedestrians
Sure.
and things like that.
Yeah.
As we, gotten into the project, the fire department had requested, if it could be driven on by an emergency vehicle, an ambulance, something like that. And so that's where, you know, we have the 10-foot wide section that's gonna be paved there. And then there's 3-foot shoulders.
Yep.
The 3-foot shoulders will be that reinforced turf that Brian was explaining earlier, so that it's, you know, you can drive on it and it's not gonna, you know, if it's wet or anything, it's not gonna.
It's like a grass
stick in.
pave or
It's
something
like a
like
grass
that.
pave,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
grass
Yeah.
green,
Gas pay,
grass-
is
Yeah.
the product,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so, so that's the intent of it. It's really for, you know, bicyclists and pedestrians, but, it
So,
will be.
so to Ed's point, and maybe if you can just go down a little bit on the screen, so where this does come into the 25-foot, where those 2 trees are.
Yeah.
That I think, I still think you're gonna have a hard time maintaining those trees if you have a 10-foot wide path with a 3-foot shoulder coming off.
Mhm.
You know, so you should have somebody evaluate those trees. I mean, if they need to go and be replaced somewhere else. And you can also shift that trail outside of the 25. I think that would be, you know, understanding that you're not subject to the local wetlands bylaw. But still, you know, as much as you can comply with it, would be good.
We'll take a look at that.
and as you touched upon, you'll look at a dewatering plan, you'll look at stockpiling.
Yeah,
You
and,
know.
and we've started to pull together,
Okay,
a dewatering plan and certainly, you know, the areas where we would anticipate, the need to dewater would be for the buildings themselves, and potentially for, the floodplain compensation areas. You know, it depends what time of year and, you know, the conditions that are happening at that point in time, but, you know, the 292, you can see the podium level says 125 on the plan. That's the upper podium level. The lower podium level is 115. So,
Sure.
you know, that's gonna be below the pond elevation in that area, so.
and you did note that you'd be plowing that pathway as well?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
anticipated to be maintained.
Okay, I just want to ensure that, given that you'd like not to make it permeable, but just
Mhm.
want to make sure you'll be maintaining it
Yeah.
in the, you know, the off season as well. To do that.
Because we anticipate this will be a conduit to West Concord
Right.
ultimately when the bridge goes in.
Mhm.
So having it not maintained in the winter would be and undermining that whole
Yeah.
intent.
Okay. And then I guess there's a discussion on the 6.8 acres, perhaps? You know,
Yes.
in regard to
Right,
the
if you wanna go
benefit or
to the-
non-benefit of it, if
Right.
you will.
Want to go to that plan that shows parcel B.
I think it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's parcel B there, that triangle. Exactly. And the wetlands aren't shown on this. Well, I guess they are, but they're not very, this parcel is entirely within wetlands. You can see the conservation restriction area boundary. It's essentially a landlocked parcel. I'm curious what the desire is to give that to the town, what the benefit or the perceived benefit is.
I think the only benefit is it just adds to the town's, you know, right, like I said, it's landlocked, it's under restriction. If the town wishes to add to its, roster or acreage of controlled lands.
We like usable land.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's not like a magnanimous gift, but it seemed like this just
Just-
adds to the acreage under control of the town.
I mean, there's no
not a
There's
huge
no
benefit.
value
Yeah.
to just having a number. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really what we have is usable open space that
Mhm.
is of value. And because this is already protected under conservation restriction, it can't be developed. We do have the right with the agreement of the property owner to construct unpaved pedestrian paths. It's not going, there's nothing to lead this to anywhere.
Yep.
It's all in wetlands. It's fairly inaccessible. So, I think that, what would be to our consideration a benefit to the town is, as you know, we have to modify the conservation restrictions to allow the path through both the 300 Baker Ave CR as well as the Concord Park CR. So those CRs, we expect, we haven't actually had a conversation yet with the state, but we expect that we will need to, we know we will need to modify and amend those CRs.
Yeah, the trail's not an explicit allowed use. as written.
Those CRs both allowed for the construction of unpaved pedestrian paths and a footbridge over the Aspet River, because this path has been contemplated for a long time. But this path now has just sort of morphed with a community interest into this 10-foot wide paved multimodal, which is not contemplated in either
Yeah.
restriction. So they need to be amended. And then we will need to create an additional CR to achieve the no net loss of Article 97.
Yeah, and I'm not the lawyer, but it seemed to me that this is still gonna be CR land that have all the attributes and benefits. Does it need to go through the legislative
100%.
review? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
So the amendments will need to go through, and both of those will need to be signed off by EEA.
Mhm.
And there will need to be a new CR developed that will also need to be signed off so that we can achieve the no net loss. And we have some ideas about that. But what would be helpful to us as a meaningful contribution to the town is to contribute some financial resources to that. Completion of the two amendments, completion of a new conservation restriction.
Survey, probably.
Yeah, it's gonna have to
Right,
be,
you have
right,
to
a new-
survey that.
right.
Yeah.
And then completion of the new conservation restriction. So that's something that we would find to be more of a benefit.
So if you could take a look at that, maybe in
And we'll review
talk
that
with
with the-
ownership, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's what I have on the list for tonight. Certainly, Bill, Nick, or Sarah? You good?
No, I am curious, one thing, small thing, and maybe it isn't it, and maybe I missed it in an earlier meeting. About that pond and the health of the pond. Has anyone looked at that, have you, I mean, your apartments are gonna be faced into that pond. And I'm curious, what's the sense about that pond?
It's somewhat eutrophic, as you'd expect with a pond that hasn't been maintained in 80 years or so. It's not the worst example of a neglected pond. It'd be nice if it wasn't such an ordeal to dredge that and maybe improve the water quality and so forth. We did do a bathymetry that's included in there. That's about 8 feet in one spot. The rest of the pond, it's 7 feet and shallower, seems to be pretty fully vegetated with floating leaves or emergent veg throughout. But it doesn't seem to be rife with invasives. From what we did late season, we didn't do a spring survey there, but we were out there in the late fall. So the pond itself is an amenity. It's not gonna be particularly fishable in peak season because of all the vegetation. It will be amenity for kayaking or canoeing, that sort of thing. And it's a suburban pond. It's not a paradigm of, ecological purity, and it's not a smoldering, swamp of.
Did you say there were stormwater discharges into that pond currently?
There are.
Currently, yes.
Yeah.
And that's from.
And is that the only,
Yeah.
and so what's the source of the water? Is it just groundwater?
Groundwater, it does, there is a discharge pipe, a 4-inch pipe that goes beneath that westerly parking lot and daylights into the floodplain. so that that pond
It-
doesn't
it-
flood over
right,
on its own
right,
and,
right.
you know, but it's volume of the pipe is, or the
Small.
capacity of that pipe is probably a little undersized, so
Yeah.
it's not gonna be an instantaneous
Right.
equalization, but
And Brian, what is the rough size of the pond? Just is it a
I think it's just over an
little over?
10
I'm just
acres?
curious.
one
It's maybe
point
a little bit
six or
over,
1.8
yeah.
acres maybe. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Curious. Bill, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, not seeing anything from the commissioners. Any public comment on this application?
Not seeing any.
Not seeing any? Okay, would you guys like to continue to the 7th or?
Yes, I think that would be the preference.
Okay, you'll hear back from the third party and
Yeah.
hopefully a little more, have a little more discussion and consideration. Okay.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
We appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you very much.
1.7 acres.
1.7?
1.7.
Ah, thank you, Brian. Okay, I think that includes the applications for this evening, so we'll move on to other business. All right, first thing up tonight is the Waters Pond Task Force. I think tonight we will take public comment, but we hope and trust at the end of that, we will be voting the Waters Pond Task Force with the commission this evening. So, Delia, do you want to put up I think we have a version 6,
Yes.
if I'm correct. Maybe we could put up on the viewer here and you want to just highlight the latest changes?
Yes. So I see, Enid, that you have your hand raised, but if you don't mind, if you can let the commission have a conversation around the task force, unless there was something that was related to some technical issues or something like that.
No, it was in response to the email that I sent it you all. I don't know if you had a chance to see it or read it.
We did, but we'll come back to that, Enid. Why don't we go through the
Fine,
changes
that's-
made to this
that's
version
fine.
6 and happy to come back to you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is, let's see, very minor changes. So, the emergency plan for the dam notes that the town owns the, dam and it's under the Public Works Department's care. So I changed that and then, David Owen, in his letter of interest had noted it's crossover ceremonies.
Ah.
So I changed that in here and then, to explore and evaluate ecological health, just to be consistent, I took out current and future. I think we know what the current recreational, so that seemed a little inconsistent, current and future recreational. Those were- So that's now explore and evaluate future ecological health and future recreational opportunities. Allison Ailey had suggested including explore and evaluate potential funding sources for each feasible alternative. There are a few other things that she had suggested that I think the commission will probably want to talk about.
Okay,
So that added one deliverable, and that I believe is the last change that has been made to this 6th revision, as you recall at the last meeting. Gary had asked, is there sort of general consensus? It wasn't a
Yep.
vote, but general consensus around the. So maybe, so Allison had 2 suggestions, additional suggestions, one in the background to include information on the dam. That it had been reconstructed, and in my opinion, that is an accurate fact. Everybody in the task force will be given documents to review, including the dam inspection report that talks about the rehabilitation of the dam. It can go in the background. I'm not sure that it's necessary. I certainly am not certain whether that 1.6 million is an accurate number. I don't know.
yeah, well, I guess I would just jump in and share your perspective that I think everybody's gonna learn what they have to learn about the background of Warner's Pond, the history of Warner's Pond. Part of that will be the dam reconstruction back in 2008, so I think I'm not, I think all those details will come out in regard to that, the initial kind of research on the backside and history of the pond. So I think that's, again, I don't think we want to encumber get too detailed with the charge as well. I think we're going to leave it broad and let the task force determine where it's going with a lot of those particulars.
And then Allison's third comment was to include a provision that if the task force has not, by August 31st, if they feel that they cannot complete their, duties and responsibilities, that they can request an extension from the Natural Resources Commission, and I would, I think that's a given with any board and,
Yeah.
task force or subcommittee that, you're,
Yeah.
they get extended all the time.
Yeah, and I would share that as well. I think that's been asked a couple of times in previous commentary, and I think we have made that statement that the task force, of course, will determine its timing ultimately based on, its fact finding and its discussions going forward. And if they determine they need more time, then they'll come forward and tell us, right, and make a recommendation that they need more time to come to a final conclusion. So I think that's right. I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I think.
Pretty sure.
I think that's right.
Okay.
So, I see,
Let me just ask the commission if, Nick, Sarah, Bill, any particular thoughts to the changes presented tonight, or any further ones from yourselves?
Having been on the previous committee that was working against the timeline for the long-range plan, I'd say trying to put anything in, giving them a cutoff date, for instance, for asking for more time isn't productive. I really think that, as you said, it's up to the task force to figure out if they need more time and when to figure it out, rather than us having a date by which they should figure it out.
Okay, thank you, Nick. And Sarah, Bill, you good on
Yeah,
the,
no further comments from me.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm good. I agree. I agree with Nick's comments, and also I think there's a lot of other information one could keep on putting into this document, but the task force itself will find the information that it needs.
Agreed.
Thank you, Bill, Sarah. Okay, with that, I think we can go out for public comment. Enid, please.
So, I just have a question. There's a section under background is where it says the town has received state and local grant funding to study the problem and implement solutions, all of which have had limited effectiveness. Could you please tell me what solutions were used and when? Because I'm not aware of them.
so there was, hydro raking that was done in the 2000s. There was a herbicide treatment that was done. There's been water chestnut that the, town staff, as well as the community, town staff has been doing it since at least the 2000s and probably prior to that into the 90s. And we have had community efforts for that water chestnut removal. So there have been a number of efforts, and we've gone out, we've obtained DEM when that was a thing back in the 2000s. They paid for some of the hydro raking efforts. We've obtained CPC funding for the watershed management plan, the dredging feasibility, a number of different plans and ways to accomplish nutrient and sediment removal.
Yeah, but all of this was aside from the hand pulling that the volunteers have been doing. It doesn't seem like anything's happened for quite a while.
What's your point?
Yeah, I think maybe it hasn't happened recently, but as Delia noted, it's happened on a number of occasions in the past. So I'm not sure that there's any reason to remove that statement necessarily
And we are,
or modify it.
up until, last year, we've been asking CPA funding to come up with, money to help affect a solution.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just feel that it's a little
little,
not fair perhaps to say that that all of which have had limited effectiveness when not much has been done in recent years. I mean, I can't, except for volunteer efforts, I don't think anything's been done in at least, what, 10 years?
said the town has annually gone out and pulled water chestnut from Warner's Pond every year since at least the early 2000s, if not the 90s. And other efforts have been ongoing as well, but that's been an annual effort that the town has done. And as I also said that, you know, there are volunteer efforts. I recognize that. I think they've been a little more sporadic. And hope that they, you know, we try to find the right solution for the pond.
Thank you, Delia. Thank you, Enid. Appreciate your comment. I can't,
Allison was next.
okay, Allison?
Sorry. Allison, we're just going to go to Mike Sullivan as the next.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Allison. That's better. Thank you.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I took my hand down because I thought you might continue on this point because I see other hands on that, but the one sentence I asked to put in about the dam and the description of the background, I understand that the task force people will get what they need, but I'm worried about the people in town who are trying to pay attention and learn about this issue. And I think that the background should give enough issue that they can be educated. And it's one sentence and it says that the dam was replaced in 2008. That figure I got from a request for town records of how much it was spent. And that it has a drawdown feature that seems really relevant to all the issues that people are considering about the dam. So it would be nice if the background, when quoted by the bridge in the future or other people Google it to learn about Warner's Pond, had some information that's relevant. And it feels like that is relevant to whether or not there's a dam removal and the treatments that might happen, the drawdown ability, and that the dam is new.
So I will point out that that drawdown feature it's not meant to draw down the pond for invasives control and sediment removal. That drawdown feature is meant as an emergency overflow mechanism. I believe, I'm not sure. Somebody's got reverb, maybe it's me. It is not, it's, I think what we've seen in prior versions of the Friends of Warner's Pond charge is that there's an implication that there's this overflow feature that the town has chosen not to use that would help with the problems that the pond is facing. And that's not accurate. The emergency action plan that is in place for the dam does not note that there's any, you know, other than the emergency control feature, there's no
Management feature.
there's no management feature that's associated with that. If the town were to implement that outlet control feature as an emergency measure to, you know, if there was some big flood that was coming in, you know, so imagine like the Amelia Earhart Dam, which is a dam release. There are other dams up in, you know, throughout Massachusetts that you need permits before you can release water under that, you know, emergency control feature. So the town does not have those in place. I don't think engineering has any intention of getting those, but as I say, that the purpose of those is not for drawing down for invasives removal and sediment management, which seems to be what
The
you know,
push is behind that.
right.
Seems like, anyway.
If the
that may be
NRC is
true.
interested.
Go ahead, Allison.
I was just gonna say, I don't have it in front of me, but I know I've read somewhere in a report or something about the rebuilding of the dam that it was specifically for helping to control invasives and sediment removal, but I may be wrong, and I understand if permits are required. It just seems relevant.
Well, if we don't know the facts. I
Yeah.
don't see-
Right,
we can
so
put
that
in-
is my understanding. I could be wrong, Allison, as well, but what I believe that you may be referring to is in one of the earlier ACT or, you know, like early 2000s management plans, there was reference about including a feature like that so that drawdown could accomplish invasives removal, but that was not how the dam was designed ultimately.
We're gonna finish up with these people first. Okay.
So, I mean, it's up to, you know.
Yeah.
And
Well, I guess
Okay.
yeah, I mean, again, we can put a lot of historical markers in the task force charge as well, but again, I think the task force is gonna be eminently aware of the dam being rebuilt in 2008. They can dig into the cost of that as well. Certainly put that on a table as a consideration, of course. But I think that's best left to the task force. I don't think we need that history necessarily here at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you for talking to me about it. And then my point was not to constrain the task force about the alternative date. I did not understand that it's just assumed that the task force can say we need more time and that will be okay, because in 2 places of this charter, you have that very specific date that the final report must be delivered. So I was just trying to say, well, what happens if they can't do it? But if it's common knowledge that if the task force gets to a place where they need more time, that will be okay. That's all I was trying to say.
Yep.
So
No, we
I did
appreciate
not
that
know that was common knowledge.
Yeah, I'm not common knowledge or maybe common practice, but sure. Yep, that's I think our approach to the task force. Thank you, Allison.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's, next one is the phone number.
Okay, I can't. Is it the 9?
Who's on your phone? Your hand is next.
Is it the 97?
Yeah.
978?
Yep.
Okay.
This is Linda Escobedo, Concord Select Board.
Hi, Linda.
Good evening.
Good evening. May I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank the task force, the commission, and the department for taking the time that you've taken to respond to the many comments that the public have made. And I think it was illustrated for me, particularly when you added a reference in the opening paragraph or somewhere near the top of the charge that spoke to the cultural and historical aspect of the pond to the town, but also mainly I'm pleased with the time that you've taken and your responsiveness to the comments that have come in, and I look forward to the work of the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate the comment. Is it Michael? Michael, comment, please.
Hi, this is Michael Sullivan, Losbrook Road. I had sent an email to the commission today as well with a similar comment, and it's similar to the concern that Enid Boasberg raised, which is related to that sentence about the efforts that were taken that haven't worked. I think the concern that you've heard from several of us over the last number of feedback sessions is we want to be careful with the language that we put into the charge, that it doesn't create an intended or an unintended bias to the coloring of how the situation works. So I appreciate that in the past session you removed the term advanced eutrophication and we just went with eutrophication. I think the concern here is that there's a similar coloring of the situation, which is to say, you know, we've tried everything, the pond is dying, now we need to decide what to do. And it's really, that's the feedback you're getting, I think, is we'd like to see the language not have any unintentional preconditioning of the outcome. So that's my comment. I'd be interested in your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I certainly don't think we mean to color anything. I think it's just a statement of facts that has occurred over the last 20+ years of I guess, on again, off again pond management. I don't think it's meant to color anything. I don't think the task force is going to necessarily take that to heart as well. They can explore all those measures, as well as alternative measures in terms of dealing with the pond and the pond management or the future of the pond. So I'm not sure, again, not meaning to color anything, but I think it's just trying to lay out some very simple facts over the past 2 to 3 decades in terms of just approaches to pond management.
Yeah, and I thank you. And I think the concern there, as Allison brought up, is as people try to educate themselves about the topic, they're going to be reading this content. And so, again, I understand that it's unintended, but it can pre-color people's thoughts. And I think I'd echo to Enid's thought on that I don't think a lot has been done to help the pond over the last 10 or so years. And so, it feels like that sentence says, we've tried a lot and nothing's working, which I don't think is really accurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I'd like to comment on that.
Please,
I think that given that things have been done, whether they were effective or not, and whether there were a lot or not, to leave out that statement that they were done also colors the discussion. It also colors it. It leaves an impression that nothing was done, and that's not the truth.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, please.
Linda Olson, 54 Losbrook. So to this question, I think is there any sort of timeline stating, in this year, this month, this week?
We can put
did
something like
this,
that
we did
together.
Yeah,
We
I
can do
think I
that.
saw something somewhere, but I don't think maybe that document there is big enough,
Correct.
we need to put it in,
Yeah.
but
Right.
would that be available or provided just so we can see what has not been
Sure.
done?
Yeah, I think as Delia indicated, staff would be happy to put together some type of rough chronology in terms of efforts made, if that's
And to the
appropriate.
point earlier about the dam being having a drawdown feature or not, or whatever is involved. I think it was stated earlier that, who is it across the way here manages the pond?
Public Works.
Public Works. I don't know if they have some documentation or historical information about what features the dam does or doesn't have, if
Yep.
there's an emergency plan in place, whatever, that
So
background.
they do
information.
have, the dam is inspected every 5 years,
Okay.
and there's a plan.
So like that would
So-
be
so-
good information to have.
And that's going to go to the task force.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if anybody is interested in reviewing that, I have a copy of it. Public Works has a copy of it. It's electronically available, so it's
Okay.
easily shareable. And it does describe the dam,
Okay.
the elevations of all the features. It's a complicated dam. And I think dams by themselves are complicated, but this is an odd one with the shape that it is, the training walls and the auxiliary spillways and everything else. But we will have not only a member of the Public Works Commission on the task force, but also one of the Public Works engineers who has a lot of knowledge.
Okay.
And so we'll be able to sort of speak to the task force about specific features of the dam and what they can do and what they can't do.
And I think-
Much better than I could, because
Right. And I
not my
think
expertise.
Also, there was the original, I don't even know what to call it, the original, study of the pond from a couple of years ago, and they said where it gave recommendations of what could or could not be done, will that be provided as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So Bert and I are pulling together documents for the task force to review, and so far what we have are pretty much what's publicly available on the website. So the watershed management plan,
Okay.
the dredging feasibility study, the alternatives analysis, and then the one that's not on our website is the inspection report, the 5-year inspection report that the Public Works Department has done every 5 years.
So that history log.
And we'll also include a timeline.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is that?
Jill Corey.
Hi, Jill. Please, go ahead. Jill, you'd like to make a comment?
Sorry, I didn't realize I was still on mute. I have a question for Mr. Pappas. A moment ago, he said, while Mike said it may be misleading to say that efforts have been made and failed, Mr. Pappas said it would be equally unfair or misleading to say, to remove that and suggest that efforts had not been made. What I'm wondering is, if there is a possibility of misleading one way or the other, why does the sentence simply stay as is? Why is the concern only about misleading that no efforts have been made? There seem to be two fair possibilities. Say efforts were made and say what efforts were made and when, rather than just leaving it very vague when, frankly, there's been very little done in 20 years. So to say efforts have been made and have not been effective, I think that's pretty misleading and frankly, a bit disingenuous.
Okay,
And
thank
if
you.
you have, why would you not simply either remove that or provide more information? I can't see why
Jill,
you would choose to do
Oh,
nothing.
sorry. Okay, thank you for your comment. And Jill, I think as we stated, I would think the commission and staff would disagree with that.
Well,
position
the
of-
commission and staff have a lot of power.
Jill, let me finish, please. That the commission doesn't share that perspective. Staff said that it would prepare, a little bit of a chronology on what's been done on the pond over the past 2 to 3 decades. So that'll be for public consumption. And I think the commission also feels it's just a statement of general fact. That's all, not meant to be misleading one way or the other. So
Sorry,
I
what's the general fact?
just a general statement about on again, off again pond management over the last 2 to 3 decades.
Yeah,
And we're
but you
not
can
gonna
say
go-
that
And
about,
we are not, Jill, we're not gonna go into excruciating detail or timelines in the charge.
well, I just think it's convenient because you can call volunteer chestnut pulling efforts.
You can, that is correct.
Well, it's very convenient. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further comment from the public in regard to the Warner's Pond Task Force charge? All right. Before we move to take the vote on version 6 as presented this evening, just wanted to survey the commissioners. As you've looked at the task force, we do have a representative that we do have to or would like to appoint. Any of the commissioners game for that appointment? Oh, Bill,
I saw a hand.
Bill, you're on mute. Bill, you're on mute.
All right. My connection is very unstable. I'm only getting about half the conversations, which may not be so bad. But anyway, I'm only getting half the conversations in this right now. But what I think you just asked is if anyone, our commission members might be interested in this. Is that what you're asking?
I did indeed.
All right. Well, I've been thinking a lot about this. I've been on for 40 years. I've canoed that pond many, many times. I've been a chair of the commission of many 35 years ago. And I'm open to either any possibility here. So I'd be willing to.
Oh, that'd be great.
I mean, others may, but I'd be willing to be a part of it. Yeah.
Well, certainly I appreciate that very much. Thank you for stepping up. Sarah, Nick, any fight over it?
No, since I'm going to be taking over chair in December, I don't think in the middle of the year, I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to be on it.
Okay. Thank you. Look forward to your chairmanship.
So Bill, we can talk offline, but just to submit a volunteer card with the town clerk's office. We can talk tomorrow.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that.
Yep, thank you.
Sure.
All right, so with that, and thank you for the comments, everyone. Sarah, could I have a motion from you to accept the Warner's Pond Task Force Charge version 6? However you want to word that.
I move that we that we accept the charge as written in version 6 for the Warner's Pond Task Force.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. And we'll take the vote. Bill? I'll go to Nick. Nick?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we got two of them at once, and Sarah?
Aye.
All right, and I am an aye as well. Thank you, Delia, staff, and certainly the community at large. Appreciate all the commentary and work up going into the charge at this degree. And I think the next steps for the Warner's Pond Task Force is again, anybody wishing to join. I think it's membership is open until end of the day Friday.
Yeah.
So please get your volunteer cards in, along with the letter of interest for those positions that are open. And then we'll work on interviews early next week and work with the town manager, and hopefully we have a special meeting next Wednesday.
Yep, to appoint task force.
24th, which would be hopefully having a slate of task force members to approve at that time so that they can get on to their work in February. All right, thank you. All right, other business. Second item, residents at Thoreau 275 Forest Ridge Road comprehensive permit review. Keely, did you want to touch on this? This is the other, or the 40B
Yes.
proposal up at Forest Ridge.
And I apologize because I did not include this in the information
Yeah.
for the commission. But I will pull up that drawing. So this is the residences at Thoreau. And let's see, this is not the right one. So give me a minute and I will just pull that up. My computer crashed as I was in the middle of pulling up documents, but so as I think my computer just died. Good. I need your battery for just a second before it's on. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, just a pause for technical difficulties. There you go. I have to give it a
second.
Give it a few seconds.
Sorry,
there.
folks. So until we have the plans come up. So the residence is at Thoreau 275 Forest Ridge Road. The select board had submitted a letter to the DHCD noting that the site is not suitable for the proposed 40B development design. DHCD did not choose to act upon that, and the application is proceeding as proposed. Because there are no wetlands present on or adjacent to the site, the only role for the commission is advisory to the zoning board of appeals and the special permit. I'm sorry, in the comprehensive permit that they will issue. So initially, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to find the plan here. And pull that up if you give me a second. So you'll recall when we first talked about this project a few meetings ago, we had hoped that there would be the ability to have a connection to the existing conservation land, Thoreau Hill Trails.
Yeah.
The applicant, as it's currently designed, this plan is building out the entire site. And what had appeared to initially be an open space is where the septic and one of their detention basins is proposed. And so those two sites are not obviously conducive to conservation land. So I don't think there's any way to get a gifting of any conservation land, and trails, it does not seem to make sense to bring in.
There's some steep.
And there's very steep grades. So there's a 3 or 5 to 11 foot high retaining wall on a
that's it.
portion, and there's, you know, there are very steep slopes. So, I think really the only recommendation that we could come up with is that, you know, they will have a number of landscape plantings. And so for those to be, you know, at least 75% native species. Again, outside of NRC jurisdiction, but that seems to be something, at least from a, you know, sustainability, biodiversity, you know,
Sure.
pollinator viability, that might be something that the
Well, I think-
commission could submit as a request.
I think that makes perfect sense. Seems like a lot of landscapers are doing that today anyway, so
Yep.
hopefully they'll continue in that vein.
Yep,
Um,
so finally getting the plan up.
okay. Yeah, I think it'd be good just to point out that
Yeah,
the difficulty of making any connection that's worthwhile,
right. Okay,
so the commission can take a final look at that.
right. So this land here is town of Concord conservation land. And this is the proposed septic system here. This is the retaining wall that the bottom of wall is at 176, top of wall is 183 in this location. And it goes up to 185 here, so it's 176 to 185. So 9-foot retaining wall. And then this here is one of their detention basins that is proposed on the site. And the rest of the property that it is entirely built out.
Looks that way. So again, doesn't make a lot of sense to try to forge your way up to this little crest and have a detention pond and septic field and
Right.
probably some other activities up there perhaps.
Also because we already do have a trail that comes around the property like this. And so
Mhm.
I was hoping that there would be some value in just creating additional, you know, green space here as more of a buffer, and that just is not being provided by this. You know, one thing that you could ask, there's no provision under comprehensive permit that any open space be provided. But if there's any interest in having them carve off additional lands from the Thorough Club and have that donated towards open space, might be a suggestion that.
Yeah, although it seems like a indirect ask if that piece of land isn't part and parcel of the 40B.
Right,
Yeah, I mean, why would Thoreau perhaps
right.
do anything at this moment anyway?
Right.
Okay. Bill, Nick, Sarah, any thoughts on that, or are you good with the lack of trail connection, if you will?
Well, it's just the way it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And good with the suggestion to the ZBA in regard to the 75% native planting threshold as a request?
Yes.
Okay. Great. I guess I'll take public comment, if there is any public comment regarding this.
I don't see any.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll move on to 10A Attawan Road, Musketequid Triangle, approved parcel name. Celia.
So as the commission will recall, a few months ago, there was a conveyance, a formal conveyance of the almost 4-acre parcel at 10A Attawan Road. It had been gifted to the town in the late 1940s. Prior to the existence of the Natural Resources Commission, it was gifted to be kept as a park. But it was municipal land. And so there's always been a concern that that land might be built upon. And so some of the community had requested that basically be confirmed as conservation land. So that has been buttoned up so that there's a recorded deed that notes that it is under the care and custody of the Natural Resources Commission. And we wanted to put a property sign out there. It's had a number of different names. It's been known as Wheeler Fields, Attawan Triangle, and Musketaquid Triangle. And so I asked Ann Clifford, our senior planner, if she could look at the sort of the historical record and make a recommendation. And so her recommendation was that it never did have a name, but it had been sort of commonly known and referred to as Musketaquid Triangle in the Select Board's 2001 vote, where they talked about this being under the NRC's custody. And so that was her recommendation, was that that was the appropriate name, was Musketaquid Triangle. So I'm just looking for a vote to sort of formalize that name so that we can now go out and put up a sign.
Yep.
That identifies the property.
Yeah, I also like that it speaks back to the Native American naming culture versus the European naming culture, which is, right, other cities, Lincoln, so on, so on, so on, so on. So,
Yeah, I like it. I like the name.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want a formal vote?
Yes, I think if we could have a motion to,
I move
Nick,
that
if you want to
we-
make that?
Yeah, I move that we recommend that the town adopt the name Musketaquid Triangle for the parcel that at 10A Attawan Road.
I second it.
Thank you, Bill, and we'll take the vote. Bill? Bill, you good?
Aye.
Thank you. Nick?
Aye.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yep, aye.
All right, and I am an aye as well. Thank you, Delia.
Welcome.
All right, and I think with that, we move on to our last agenda items, administrative approvals. We've got 4 of them up. And Delia, if you want to just talk about each one, we can
Yes.
move through them.
Sure. So Anderson, 1711 Lowell Road. You probably recall that there was a request to remove a dead tree right at the edge of the buffer zone close to the house. There are now 3 additional trees that are in the outer buffer zone. 1 that's fallen and 2 that are creating they're close. If they fell, they'd fall on the house. And so 3 trees to be removed in the outer buffer zone. 1 with the one that's fallen has left like a 6 to 8 foot high snag. And that
Oh,
will
okay.
remain.
So that'll remain.
That'll
Okay, I was
remain.
gonna ask about if there was an option to do that. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Commission go with that? Okay.
Yes.
Skelly 887 Lowell Road. So this homeowner had a fairly dramatic with one of the storms, maybe 6 weeks ago, a number of trees fell. And normally we would, just say, just fine, they could just fall and leave them as they lie. He is interested in removing some of those. So it's not actually tree removal, it's more debris removal. So we just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware that it is going to be 6 trees. They're all fallen. There are 3 white pines and 3 black walnuts. And they will be working with a landscape company to come around the side of the house. They will be they'll come up to about 25 feet from wetlands to remove these materials, but they'll stay within, the sort of hard packed lawn area. And so it would just be removing that sort of debris and fallen limbs.
Okay. Good. All
Yeah.
right.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay, and then at 100 Kai's Road, there are 2, let's see, there are 4 trees, a black cherry, an ash, an elm, and a red maple, and either dead or dying, and they are leaning all towards areas of the parking lot. They're all within the 25-foot no disturb zone and within the 100-year floodplain. 2 would be left as snags. They would be removed with a crane, flush cut, and the crane would be either on the parking lot or on the lawn outside the 25-foot.
Okay. You guys good with that?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
oh, good.
And then the last one is at the Walden Woods project. They've got 2 trees, an eastern hemlock and a red maple that are right up against their barn. They've got a lean and they have some significant failures. The hemlock's got woolly adelgid.
No.
And there's some stem failures in the red maple. And then they have a dead cherry out in the fields that's just out in the open that they'd like to take down. So those trees, the black cherry and the eastern hemlock are in the outer buffer zone, and the red maple is in the 50-foot. But they would, again, just be flush cut.
No need to replace.
No, it's,
Sonny.
except for the black cherry, which is at a field.
Yeah.
It's very wooded otherwise.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah, all
Okay.
good.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
All
great.
good.
Thank you, Dila. All right, I think with that, we're adjourned for the evening. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right.
Night, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.